Okay, hello there. Hi everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. My name is Lara Ryan. I'm the founder of Complete Test Success. I've been an IELTS examiner for writing and speaking. I've been teaching IELTS since 2010. And in today's live stream, I'm going to help you with IELTS Writing Task 2. So basically what we're going to do is work through a question together. So I'll show you a Task 2 question. I'll get you to share your ideas with me. I'll get you to share your writing with me. And then I'll give you feedback on which ideas are acceptable and which ideas are not. If they're not acceptable, I'll explain why. So that will help you come up with ideas that are suitable for your own IELTS writing. And then if you're making mistakes, so let's say if you're making vocab mistakes or grammar mistakes, I can point out what issues you have. And again, once you understand your weaknesses, you'll be able to start working on improving those areas. And that again will improve your scores. So basically, we're going to write an essay together, and I'm going to give you feedback on your writing as we do that. So first of all, let me share the question with you guys here. So this is the question that we're working on today. Some people believe that teenagers shouldn't be allowed to have their own smartphones. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this statement? Okay, so the first task for you guys then is to tell me what ideas can we use in this essay. Now, I want 2 ideas, all right? So are we going to have 2 ideas for agreeing? Or are we going to have 2 ideas for disagreeing? To be honest, I don't really mind. Whichever's easiest, really. So if we can think of 2 ideas for agreeing first, that's what we will say our opinion is. If we can think of 2 ideas for disagreeing first, that's what we'll say our opinion is. So don't worry about your real opinion. What we're more concerned about is, can we come up with ideas that are suitable? So that is the first thing that I want you guys to do. So think of some ideas, share them with me in the comments, and I'll give you guys some feedback then on your suggestions. With our ideas, the main things that we're checking for are if the ideas are relevant. If they're not relevant, we're going to get a low task response score. So that's why I like to plan the essay before writing it, just so we can check our ideas really carefully. So A, we need to have ideas that are relevant. If all your ideas are irrelevant, you'll get a lower task response score, like maybe 4. That would often happen when students and candidates misunderstand the question. If you even have 1 irrelevant idea, you'll get a band 5. Now, in this essay, I only want to have 2 ideas, but there will be other questions where you might need 4 ideas. And even in that situation, 1 irrelevant idea will result in a band 5. So it could be the situation where, you have 3 ideas are perfect, but 1 idea is irrelevant. So that's the first thing. We need to make sure the ideas are relevant, and that's why you need to read the question carefully and make sure your ideas are exactly about what the question asked you to discuss. The second requirement of the ideas is that your ideas are relevant. That your ideas are specific. So the problem is if you come up with a vague idea, like for example, you should say like, oh, I agree that teenagers should be allowed to have phones because they're good. That's too vague. Like good could mean, there could be many different reasons why it's good. So you need to give a specific idea. Like, why do you think it's good? Give me a specific idea rather than a vague one. What happens when you use vague ideas is you will very often end up with a band 6 for task response, because when you try to develop it, you don't actually explain why it's good. You end up listing many reasons why it's good. So if you have ideas with no development, that's a band 6. So those are the things that we're looking out for. Whether you agree or disagree doesn't matter. And I would never really use my real opinion in the essay, because sometimes when you only think about one side, like I decide, okay, I agree, and I only think about that side, it might be more difficult to think of ideas whereas the other side might be easier to come up with the ideas we need. So don't close off any options. Consider both sides, see which one's easiest, and then we'll just go with that. Okay, so I'll just give you guys, let's say, another 30 seconds. If we don't get any ideas, I'll show you some ideas that I could use here, and we'll move on from there. Okay, so what I'm thinking at this moment is just basically anything good or anything bad about smartphone usage in relation to teenagers. So, oh, here's Olivia. Let's see what Olivia has to say. Hi, Olivia. Phone help youngsters do research during study. Perfect. Secondly, parents are very busy. These with their, so I'm not sure what that is, busy with their work, I suppose. So giving phone to teenagers helps in communication in their absence. Okay, yep, so both of those ideas are suitable. Hello from Cameroon. Hi, Olivia. Okay, so both of those ideas are suitable, and that would be for disagreeing. So you're talking about reasons why the phones are good, and the opinion in the question is that they shouldn't be allowed to own their phones. So we're going to say we disagree. The first one, and now one point actually that I didn't make when reading Olivia's, and one point that I didn't make when talking about what is a good or bad idea. When you are writing down your main ideas, try to do it in like about 4 or 5 words. If you have a full sentence, it becomes a bit more difficult to analyze it later on. So when we plan our essay, each idea should be 4 or 5 words, short, to the point, and then it's easier to check, like, is this definitely relevant? Is it definitely specific? So it's easier when you're it's easier when you just write a small number of words. Okay, so Olivia says help with study, or maybe like useful for doing research. And then the second one was helpful to communicate with parents. Helpful for communicating with parents. Okay, so this is what I teach the students on my course to do. Come up with your ideas first. After that, we're going to have to decide how to develop our ideas. So we develop our ideas a little bit. That will help us to get a band 7. We develop our ideas even more, we get a band 8, and then fully developed to the full extent, we're looking at a band 9. So that's my next task for you guys. I want you to tell me how can we develop these ideas. We'll just start with the first one, useful for doing research. So we'll just look at this one first. Tell me, how can we develop this idea? So in the chat, in the comments, just tell me, what would you say to explain this? Or what example would you give of this? That's for the agreement part. Well, it wouldn't be for the agreement part, Olivia, because the opinion is that they shouldn't be allowed. And we're talking about reasons why the smartphones are useful and helpful. So we're disagreeing. Like the question says they shouldn't be allowed. So we're saying, no, I don't think that's the right thing to do. I think that they should be allowed. So we're disagreeing with the opinion. So the opinion isn't that smartphones are good. The opinion is that smartphones are bad, and we don't think that's correct. So that's why we're disagreeing. So just make sure to keep your ideas lined up with your opinion. Again, that would reduce your task response score. If you misunderstood the question, you said, I agree, here's why they're good, you would not be answering the question. Your opinion wouldn't be directly responding to the question. Okay, so I'll give you guys a minute. Think about what explanations or what examples can we use to develop this idea here. Hi, Grandboy. Good to see you back. Good to see you here again. So useful information can be accessible via social platforms such as YouTube. Yes, but we're trying. No, not exactly, because you're talking about doing useful research or where you can do research. So you're talking about the idea. But the thing is, you have to explain why we should allow why we should allow teenagers to have smartphones, because they're able to do research. So not just where would they do research, but why would having a smartphone allow them to do research better than if they didn't have a smartphone? So we're not explaining where to do research or what websites or what apps they might use to do research. So don't forget what the question is about. And this is a very common reason why people would get stuck at a band 6 in task responses. They start talking about their idea, but not with any connection to the question. So what you're doing, what you've suggested here, yes, you're talking about your idea, but you're not showing how your idea is connected to the question and why you disagree and why we should allow teenagers to own smartphones. So yeah, just be careful with that. Your development must be about your idea, but also in the context of the question. Hi, Sandesh. Teenagers can utilize mobile phone to get help for their assignment, as well as they can get innovative ideas by social media to enhance their skills. I'd like a stronger argument. We're trying to say we think teenagers should be allowed to have smartphones. So can we make this a bit stronger? Not just what they can do on the smartphone, but why they should be allowed to have smartphones. So like, let's say, for example, if you were to compare, we got two kids at school, one of them has a smartphone, one of them doesn't have a smartphone, right? So we're trying to say that, like, we're trying to show why it's a good idea. This one kid has a smartphone. Why is this an advantage? Why is this a good thing? So not just that they can utilize it for their assignments, which is kind of vague anyway. Try and be more direct in terms of why does this mean that we should allow them to have the phones? Teachers give homework and most of the parents are not always available to teach them, or something, are not educated to teach the children, so they need this phone for research. No, not really. Because they need the phone for research. What happens if they don't have the phone? And it's becoming like it's becoming more distant. Like when you're saying the teacher gives them homework, okay, so what happens to the kid who doesn't have a smartphone? Is it they can't do their homework? So is it that the school requires them to have one, or what? Like, because you're kind of creating extra considerations. So again, think of it like this: we have our idea, and we have the topic from the question. So the topic from the question is, we're saying children should be allowed to have smartphones. Why? Because they will be able to do research. Connect those together. Explain to me why that happens or how that happens in more detail. Okay. In emergency situations, can be in touch with friends and family. Yes, that's the second idea. We'll come to that as well. It's an economical way to do research. Again, yes, that would be another idea. It's not the idea that we've chosen to discuss in this essay, but that would be another suitable idea. Okay, and we looked at that already. Teenagers can access updated information by using smartphones that is difficult to find in textbooks. Okay, So here now what we're saying is that the kids who don't have smartphones, they have to use textbooks, but that information isn't as up to date. Fantastic. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're showing why if they have the smartphone, they have this advantage versus if they don't have the smartphone. Whereas the other ideas that we saw, you're not really doing that. So let's add that more up to date than textbooks. Okay. Now we really need to develop that idea another little bit. So we're where we are now is probably good enough for a band 7, but when we only have 2 ideas in our essay, we're going to have to write about 100 words for each idea. So that's not going to get me to the full 100 words. I need something extra, like let's say an example or something that we can include. Now, what happens to a lot of students is they'll get this far and they'll go, okay, I'm just going to go with this. So like they'll have a little bit of development. So then they go to write the essay to go, okay, here's my main idea. Here's the bit of development I decided on. And then they're stuck and they're back in that situation going like, I don't know what to say next. Right. Don't start writing your essay until you've finished your essay plan. And at the moment we haven't. You know, we're getting there. We're getting there, but let's get another little bit of development for the first one. Let's say like we might even put in an example. So we'll say, for example, my university. Oh no, because university, you wouldn't be a teenager anymore. Let's say my secondary school project. Okay, so then that would be enough. All right, so let's move on to the second idea, helpful for communicating with parents. Same task. How can we develop this idea? So let's decide on what development we're going to use first. And then once we've got that done, we'll start writing the essay. Now, very often in these live streams, I don't plan the essay with you guys first. I just get your ideas and I take the ones I like and I construct them into the essay straight away. But for my students, the students on my courses, I'll always get them to write an essay plan first. Because the thing is, if you write an essay plan first, you're 100% focused on this one thing instead of trying to write the essay and think of the ideas and do everything at the same time. So this is just an easier way to make sure that everything you say is appropriate. And once you've done that, you're guaranteed a high task response score. Like your task response score is, can you do this? Can you come up with ideas that are relevant and specific? And can you develop them appropriately? And writing a plan first allows you to be way more focused on doing that correctly and carefully. Okay, so let's say just another 30 seconds there. We'll see how you guys would suggest developing this second idea. And then we'll move on to actually writing the essay itself. Okay, so it doesn't have to be anything too complicated or anything too unusual. So let's just say can always contact parents, or let's say like anywhere, anytime. And let's say, I'll say like, for example, my daughter missed her bus. I mean, that's not true. That never happened. But I'm just going to say in my essay, there's a situation where my daughter missed her bus, and she was able to contact me, and I was able to go and collect her or whatever. Okay, so that is our essay plan done. And what that means now is when we're writing our essay, we do not need to consider our task response score anymore. And all of our focus is now on our vocab, our grammar, coherence and cohesion, just making sure that the essay is written in a clear way. Okay, so my next task for you guys is then, can you write the paraphrase for me? So the paraphrase is going to be the first sentence of our essay. It's where you take that question statement at the top. So the question says, some people believe that teenagers shouldn't be allowed to have their own smartphones. We want to rewrite that in our own words. So we want to have a sentence with the same meaning. We want to have a sentence with the same meaning and just change as many words as we can. And what's important about what I said there is as many as we can, because where a lot of people go wrong is they'll try to change more than they can. And then obviously they make more mistakes and it becomes less clear. So you want to be careful with that. Does a balanced approach affect task achievement? I'm not sure what you mean by a balanced approach. If you give me more information, I'll tell you that in more detail. Personal examples are okay. Yes, Blossom. Yeah, personal examples are fine in IELTS writing. They are like a normal academic essay, like at university. No, you're not allowed to use personal examples. But in the IELTS test, it's absolutely acceptable. Yeah. In speaking part 3, can we give personal example from our personal experience? You can, yeah. In part 3, there's a lot, like in speaking, there's a lot more freedom. Like in part 3, you can just talk like you're having a chat, and the content isn't being assessed as much as it is in task 2. So in the speaking test, it's more about, are you answering the question I asked? And if you are, whatever you say is fine. Like whether you're right, wrong, whether I agree or disagree with you, whether you're formal or informal, like, you know, none of that matters. It's just, I need you to answer the question I asked. If I ask you a question and you talk about something different, I cannot include any of the good language in your, like, use that towards to account for your score. But besides that, in the speaking test, there's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of freedom compared to compared to the writing. Sandesh, if students have access to their own smartphones, they can communicate with their parents in everyday. For instance, students can talk about their academic activities with their parents. I wouldn't really talk about like what they can discuss. I mean, what they're talking about really isn't that important. Just that they can, you know. So that would be a little bit irrelevant, the example you gave. So we don't want to give examples of what they're talking about, just examples of them, you know, using it in that situation. Many individuals deem that adolescents should not own mobile phones. Yep. Good. Let me just copy that. Give me a second. I need to jump onto Facebook here and copy that. Okay, so I have that here. And this is the first sentence of our essay. Right. So many individuals deem that adolescents should not own mobile phones. Should not own them, should not be allowed. I think we'll keep that in there. Should not be allowed to own mobile phones. Smartphones, mobile phones. Yeah, fair enough. That's fine. And what you see as well is, look, shouldn't be allowed, should not be allowed. So what you'll always have some words that you'll need to copy from the question. That's completely normal. Some people go too far where they try to change everything and it becomes unclear. Okay, so now I need to outline my essay. Well, I mean, that's pretty easy because I've already decided what I'm going to say here. So then it just becomes like, however I disagree, because they are useful for doing research and helpful for communicating with parents. Okay, so that's my introduction done. Paraphrase the question, give my opinion, and outline my main ideas. So we have our 1, 2 ideas. And that's it. That's the first paragraph finished. Now, what you see is when we plan our essay first, it becomes so easy to write the essay because we're never stopping in the middle going like, what am I going to say now? Or what's the right thing to say now? Or what should I say next? We know exactly what we want to say. So it's just turning those ideas into full sentences and trying to do it clearly. Okay. So that is the introduction done. So my next task for you, I guess, is a kind of a long one. Write body paragraph 1. So I'm going to give you some time to do this. I realize that, writing a paragraph takes time. But we already know what we want to say. So it's based on this. So we're just turning this, what we had here, into a full paragraph. It should be somewhere around, excuse me, 100 words or so. So I want you all to use the ideas that we already have on the screen. And I want you to turn that into body paragraph 1 for me. So following this here. Share your writing with me, and this is where I'll be able to give you more feedback on like the vocab and the grammar mistakes and that kind of stuff. So yeah, let's say I'll give you like 3 or 4 minutes, write up the body paragraph, share it with me, and then I'll have feedback for you guys. If you're on YouTube, you probably won't be able to write the full paragraph. It might be like maybe the first 40 or 50 words. That's fine. Just share that with me. Those of you on Facebook, the comments can be longer. So, feel free to write out the full thing. Coramboy, can we choose a balanced approach to this question type? A first body paragraph, we write why we agree, and a second, why we disagree. Yeah, you can, as long as it's always clear. Like if your opinion becomes unclear, that will affect your task response score. I always tell my students, just go on one side or the other because it's easier, it's less complicated, you're less likely to make mistakes. But your question is, can we? And the answer is yes, we can. In the IELTS test, you can, but it's not my recommendation. I heard some reliable teachers to say in writing, we should not be use personal examples, so I confused. Okay, so Blossom, if you, I can't share my screen with you now, but if you go and find an IELTS writing question, like go to Cambridge IELTS book or go to any, get the question, it says it underneath. So hang on, I'll get one up here and I'll show it to you. So I'm gonna have to stop sharing my screen here for a minute. Okay. So you can see in that question, so look at the bottom. Underneath the question, give reasons for your answer and include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. It says it there. Use relevant examples from your own knowledge. So that just shows you, it literally says it. So yeah, in a normal piece of writing, you're not supposed to do that. That is correct. In a normal academic essay, you're not supposed to do that, but this isn't a normal academic essay. This is the IELTS test and you are allowed. So yeah. Can repetition affect your score a lot? It depends, yeah. I mean, yes, but when people worry about that too much, they often make more mistakes than they should. So what will happen is, like, I'll have a student who says, okay, I don't want to use the word teenagers. So then they'll use every other word they can think of instead of using teenagers. And then lots of times the words have different meaning, or they're unclear, or, you know, like they start making mistakes. So yeah, technically speaking, yes, the wider range of vocab, the better. But if you take that too far and try to never use the same word twice, you'll end up making more mistakes than you need to, or than you should, and you'll get a lower score than you deserve. So yeah, don't worry too much about repetition. If you have the range and the ability to change it, change it. But if you don't have the range and you don't have the ability, you don't know the synonyms, you're just going to have to use that word many times. And in a question like this about phones, I mean, like, there isn't really another word for phone. Like, we have mobile phone, smartphone, whatever, or just phone, but you're going to have to use the word phone a lot, because it's an essay about phones. So don't overthink it. Okay, Boy. One of the main reasons why teenagers should be allowed to use smartphones is its benefit to do in-depth research. Good. So that could be the first sentence of our paragraph. What I would say, though, is that word benefit isn't really quite right, but everything else is good. Okay. So, yeah, definitely that could be the first sentence. Do you know what? I'm going to put it underneath here because we've so much stuff on screen here at the moment. So, yeah, that's perfect. So that can be our topic sentence. That can be the first sentence of our paragraph. So one of the main reasons why teenagers should be allowed to use smartphones is its benefit. No, its benefit isn't quite right. Is maybe the ability to do. Is they give teenagers the ability to do in-depth research. Okay. Is that they give. Okay. So that could be the first sentence of our essay. Good. So we still need to consider how are we going to develop that further. So we need to say that they're more up to date than textbooks, and we're going to talk about some secondary school project that we did. Okay. One of the main advantages of using smartphones for teenagers is that students can easily access an overwhelming number of research materials by using them. The by using them thing is the part that I'm just kind of thinking about, like, is that necessary, or is that the clearest way of saying it? I think putting by using them after that would be better. One of the main advantages of using smartphones for teenagers is that by using them, students can easily access an overwhelming number of research materials. Yeah. It's just a bit more cohesive that way. Good. Yep, very good. So that would be another topic sentence. Good. In other words, teenagers can access up-to-date and beneficial information that is difficult to find in textbooks. Okay. I'm going to change that. Because, to be honest, it's like we're trying to show why we think it's a good idea that they want smartphones. So let's talk more directly about how that relates to compares to those who don't have smartphones. So let's kind of flesh that out a little bit. Okay. In other words, teenagers can access up-to-date and beneficial information that is difficult. Okay, and this is where I'm going to add that is difficult for those who don't have smartphones to find because they can only use textbooks for their research. They can only use textbooks to do their research. I think I might be gone a bit off, so I need to read that again. In other words, teenagers can access, okay, these teenagers, because we're talking about the ones with smartphones. Because these teenagers can access up-to-date and beneficial information that is difficult for those who don't have smartphones to find, because so this is an unclear reference. When I said they, I've just been talking about two groups of people, teenagers with the phones and teenagers without the phones. So when I say they, who am I talking about now? So that's unclear. Because if someone can only use textbooks to do their research, they will have a limited amount of information. Okay, there we go. So in other words, these teenagers can access up-to-date and beneficial information that is difficult for those who don't have smartphones to find, because if someone can only use textbooks to do their research, they will have a limited amount of information. Good. Okay, so that there is 65 words, so we're nicely on track. We just need to add in our example, and then that paragraph is finished. Okay, Blossom says, one primary reason is that using mobile phone, that would have to be plural, using mobile phones, and then we need the word is, because using mobile phone, that's an action. So we're not saying they are, we're saying this action, doing this action, it is useful for doing research. By teenagers, no, because you didn't use a passive structure. Also, you need to start the sentence with a capital letter. So let's say one primary reason, and if the reason is why they should own it, is that using mobile phones is useful for doing research, and then just remove the by teenagers, I think would be clearer. Okay. Reza, online content is updated and reliable. And now you need a gerund here, allowing teens. Teens is informal, unfortunately, so it is a synonym, but we cannot use any informal language. Allows teens to have profound understanding related to research they want to conduct. Yes, good. But again, if we could kind of bring it back to, what's the opposite then for the kids who don't have those phones? Firstly, phones are useful to be used by teenagers. Useful to be used by teenagers. No, they're useful for teenagers to use, because in most libraries, books are old-fashioned and mobiles are up-to-date, and they can access anything they want during their research. And then full stop at the end there, Olivia. This is because using smartphones for research, students have access to more up-to-date information than they would find in textbooks. So you need to kind of flesh it out and say exactly what you're talking about. But good. Yes, I like this. But just make those changes that I suggested. Okay, we're kind of pushing on. We've been at this 40 minutes now. And we're still only on body paragraph 1. So what I might do is I'll just jump in and finish it off. So what did I say? For example, my secondary school project. Okay. For example, when I was in secondary school, I didn't have a smartphone, and my project and when we had a project when we had a research project, my presentation was very basic compared to the other students who had smartphones and were able to, access better information or more information. Okay, there we go. All right, that might be a little bit long. Let's see. Word count 105. No, that's pretty much spot on. So we're looking for about 100 words or so, and that's what it looks like. So we have our main idea, explanation, and example. It's kind of the easiest way to develop these like paragraphs when you need about 100 words. And then all we did was follow our plan, right? So that's all we needed to do. Then we move on to the second paragraph and we do the same thing again. Like I said, we're kind of running out of time here at the moment. So I might just do this for you guys and then just let you ask any questions you have once we're finished. So basically I have my paraphrase, my opinion, my two main ideas. 100 words talking about the first idea, and now I need 100 words talking about this second idea. So this is going to be my second body paragraph. Okay, so another reason why I disagree is that smartphones are incredibly, and now I have my idea, helpful for communicating for teenagers to communicate with their parents. Okay. Now we're going to talk about anytime, anywhere, and anytime. So, okay. When they have their own smartphones, they can contact their parents from anywhere and at any time. And this is incredibly helpful when something unexpected happens. Okay. So that would be that. And then I just need to add on my example. Let me have a quick look, see if we have any comments or any questions before we look at it. I'm not sure which comments I've looked at last, so let's just take it from here. Firstly, phones are useful to be used by teenagers. We looked at that already. This is because using smartphones for research. That's the subject. And now you need a verb. So this is because using smartphones for research. And now what is helpful for students to access more up-to-date information than textbooks. We looked at that as well, didn't we? This is because nowadays many writers publish their latest books on the internet and by mobile phones. One can easily, and with mobile phones, one can easily access them and use these books for their own research. Good. Hey, Lewis, is it a good idea to make the example more general and less personal? No, doesn't matter. I mean, whatever's easiest for you to do. but either way is acceptable. Can we use university instead of secondary school? I was going to do that, but then I remembered it's teenagers. I mean, I know like 18, 19, you're still a teenager, but when we talk about teenagers more generally, we would think more about secondary school than university. So that's why initially I was thinking university, but then remembered that the question is about specifically teenagers. So no, I went back and said secondary school. Can I just write one advantage and one disadvantage in advantage, disadvantages essay? No, you can't. That's not enough. Lewis, instead of when they have their own, can we say when these teenagers have their own? Yeah, definitely. Well, these teenagers are the ones who have their phones already. So it's not these teenagers, it's any teenager. And when you're saying these teenagers, you're either referring to the group that has the phone or the group that doesn't have the phone, depending on what you just discussed earlier. So no, actually no. Can I use recapitulate instead of in conclusion? I don't know. I'll have to check what that means. Recapitulate. Summarize and state again the main points of. He began to recapitulate his argument with care. Summarize, sum up, restate, repeat, reiterate. I've never seen it used. It's not common. I just use in conclusion. There's nothing wrong with saying in conclusion. I mean, that's exactly what the purpose of that word. So just use in conclusion. You'll know you're right. Okay. For example, or no, did I use that already? Okay. So let's say, for instance, my daughter missed her bus home from school one day, and she was able to contact me immediately with her smartphone so that I could come and collect her. But if she hadn't had one, it would have been more difficult for her to, I don't know, resolve this issue. Something like that. Okay, so how many words do I have here? 93, a little bit short, but that's okay. So then you can see we're pretty much done. We just have to write the conclusion. So we have our introduction, one paragraph about the first idea, one paragraph about the second idea, and then our conclusion. Again, let me just jump back and take a look at any questions you have before I write that. What are the direct synonyms of teenagers? Now, there aren't really that many, and a lot of them are informal then. And a lot of them would just include like all children rather than that smaller group of children. So there aren't really any. What do you think if I talk about cities' critics' viewpoints in the first body paragraph, and in the second give reasons for disagreeing? I would put, if you're going to do that, so you're saying 3 ideas. I wouldn't have one paragraph with 1 idea and then another paragraph with 2 ideas. Break it into 3. So it'll be 1 paragraph for the opposite side and then 2 paragraphs for my side. But yeah, you can do that. There are many different ways to write an essay. You know, I just teach this way because I like it and I think it's the easiest way to get a high score. But there are many different ways of structuring an essay, many different acceptable ways. Yeah. Please tell us the overall score of this essay. Well, I mean, it's on track for like 8.5 or 9 anyway. Yeah. What I would worry about is that second one might be a little bit short. So maybe developing that second paragraph a bit further would be a good idea. But I mean, it's all there, really. I mean, the vocab there's a range of vocab. All the grammar is accurate, using a range of structures. It makes sense. It's logical. It progresses well. It's well organized. I mean, it's all the things you need. So yeah, band 9, maybe band 8.5. So in conclusion, I disagree that teenagers should be banned from having smartphones because these devices are useful for doing research at school or research for school, and they are beneficial. They are maybe like a useful, or what do I want to say? They are, and the ability for these children to contact their parents whenever they want is extremely beneficial. Okay. All right, there we go. That's the full essay. And obviously it took us a little bit longer today. We'd normally get through it a bit faster than that. But we planned the essay first. And that took time, whereas normally I just put the essay together as you guys are sharing your ideas with me. Okay, so yeah, I'm happy with that. That's a good essay. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all we have time for today. I have another lesson coming up, so I need to get myself ready for that. Some good input. Hopefully you've learned from your mistakes. Some of you, I pointed out vocab and grammar mistakes. If you're making mistakes, like, be aware that that's something you need to work on. If you provided some irrelevant ideas, if you've provided some irrelevant development, learn from that. You know, it's no problem. Making these mistakes is no problem. And in this environment, you know, I'm not giving you a score. It's not your real test. So it doesn't matter if you're making mistakes here. But what I would like you to do is just learn from that. You go, okay, remember last time I came up with that development, it wasn't suitable. Next time I need to be more careful that I'm discussing my development is within the context of the question, or whatever that might be. Rightio. So I'll be back next week. We'll do another live stream next week on another topic. And yeah,